today with a very serious purpose. To rally for S725, the Alan Reinstein and Trevor Schaefer Toxic Chemical Detection Act, and against S697, the Udall-Vitter-Inhofe. Today, we are going to be telling the truth about two pieces of legislation. And as it has been said for a very long time, the truth shall set us free. And the truth must be told, because nothing less than the health and safety of the lives of our people is at stake. Our bill, Boxer-Markey's bill, will regulate and in some cases phase out the most dangerous chemicals out of the 80,000 in existence today. Of these chemicals, more than 1,000 present significant public health impacts and require priority attention. The Boxer-Markey bill's formula guarantees action on hundreds of these dangerous chemicals. The Udall-Vitter bill only provides for just the assessment, no implementation action, just the assessment of 25 chemicals. So when our friend Senator Udall talks about the 80,000 chemicals, keep in mind that his bill only requires studying over 7 years, 25 chemicals, and there is no statement that any action has to be taken. Now, one of the impacts of these chemicals that we need to regulate may include cardiovascular disease, developmental disorders, respiratory disorders, neurological disorders, endocrine disruption, and many others. Our bill, S725, directly addresses one of the most dangerous chemicals known to humankind, asbestos. It kills 10,000 people a year. Their bill, the Udall bill, does not even mention the word asbestos. And experts tell us unequivocally that the regulation of asbestos under the Udall-Vitter bill will never happen. We specifically address children's cancer clusters and chemicals that build up in your body, known as persistent bioaccumulative and toxic chemicals. There is no mention of that word in the Udall-Vitter bill. We allow the states to continue their extraordinary work to protect their people. That is a stark difference from the Udall-Vitter bill, which eviscerates the rights of the states to act to protect their people, and many attorneys general will corroborate that statement today. Our bill is endorsed by more than 450 environmental and health organizations who oppose the Udall-Vitter bill. And I'm going to just give you a quick rundown, very quick, before I turn it over to Senator Markey, of what these groups are saying. Ken Cook, the president and co-founder of the Environmental Working Group, said this, quote, "This chemical industry proposal is worse than current law. It fails to meet even basic criteria for effective reform that protects our children's health." Earth Justice had this to say about Udall-Vitter, quote, "The chemical industry got exactly what it wanted. Again," unquote. The director for Safer Chemicals, Healthy Families, Andy Regis, says, quote, "Firefighters, nurses, parents of kids with learning disabilities, and cancer survivors all still oppose this legislation," unquote. And according to the Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization, quote, "The fact that the Vitter-Udall bill will not even restrict, much less ban, the deadly substance that claims 30 lives a day is nothing short of a travesty." And they go on. "Any senator who supports this industry proposal is in essence supporting a continuation of the toll asbestos has already had on millions of American families." And the Breast Cancer Fund said this, quote, "The lack of chemical safety for the 21st Century Act undermines what few health protections from toxic chemicals now exist. It advances the interests of the chemical industry and disregards years of work by healthcare professionals, scientists, public health advocates, and state legislators to enact meaningful reform." Now, to be 100% candid and direct, their bill has been generated by the chemical industry itself. And I believe we have a chart that proves it to you. We got their bill from Senators Udall and Vitter by email. It was represented to be their draft that they intended to use at the legislative hearing.
subject to a few additional changes. It is clear from the computer coding that the final draft bill originated with the American Chemical Council itself. And you can all see this. And it was actually written by McClatchy News that this is the fact. Now, maybe I am old-fashioned, but I don't believe that a regulated industry should be so intimately involved in writing a bill that regulates them. As my children would say when they were young, duh. It's quite obvious. The voices of public health and safety organizations that speak for our citizens must be heard. Their views must not be drowned out by the very industry that is supposed to be regulated. Now, in closing, I want to say this. I loved Frank Lautenberg so much, and it is with deep respect and a very heavy heart that I make these statements about the bill that has been named after him. But I remember when Frank said this, quote, "It's time to take action on TSCA reform and put an end to the chemical companies' political games," unquote. Well, the Boxer-Markey bill just does that. We are true reform. The Udall-Vitter bill, while having a beautiful name, is a product of the chemical companies. I now call on my wonderful colleague, Senator Ed Markey, and he is chairman of the subcommittee that is involved with toxic reform.
Thank you, Senator Boxer. Thank you so much for your incredible leadership on this issue and so many other environmental issues. As Senator Boxer said, I am the ranking member on the subcommittee that has jurisdiction over TSCA, and I want to thank everyone for participating today. First of all, happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. It's ironic that we are talking about getting chemicals out of people's bodies at this press conference when I'm pretty sure there are going to be some going into people's bodies later on this evening. And I especially want to thank Andrew Goldberg, Assistant Attorney General from the Environmental Protection Division in the Office of Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey. Mr. Goldberg and the Attorney General are continuing Massachusetts' long and proud leadership on environmental and public health protection. I thank them for supporting our bill to protect Massachusetts residents. And I want to tell you why I am here today, and I have partnered with Senator Boxer on this issue. A few miles from my house in Malden, Massachusetts, is Woburn. And there I met a boy named Jimmy Anderson. And Jimmy Anderson was like any other kid growing up in Woburn. But at the age of 3, he was diagnosed with a rare form of leukemia. And the kids in his neighborhood were like any other kids in Boston or in America, except they were also being diagnosed with leukemia as well, at a very alarming rate. The reason was that for decades, chemical companies and other industries used nearby land as their dumping grounds for thousands of tons of toxic materials. And over the years, these chemicals leached their way into the groundwater and contaminated the water supply with toxic chemicals like TCE. Now, largely driven by his mother's intuition, Ann Anderson, she began a movement of other mothers to identify this cluster of cancers and then to begin the fight to have that site cleaned up. But at that point, there was no Superfund. And we held a hearing up in Woburn to highlight this site, to highlight what was happening to the children of Woburn. And a book was written about this whole Woburn Superfund site called A Civil Action, which became a movie, which dramatized how indifferent the industry was to the impact their chemicals were having upon especially the bodies of young children in our country. And because of that, it spurred, along with other incidents like Love Canal, the passage of the Superfund law. So Jimmy died in 1981. And incredibly, it took the EPA until 2014 to finish studying the risks of TCE exposure, when Jimmy would have been, by that time, in his mid-40s, and the EPA still has not taken any action under TSCA to limit or ban TCE, all of these years later. There is no question in my mind that there will be more Jimmy Andersons unless EPA is given clear authority, resources, deadlines to assess and take action on chemicals like TCE and asbestos that have already been proven to kill. And that's why we are proposing this bill as the right alternative. There are three main reasons why our bill is the right pathway to protect Americans from toxic chemicals. Number one, our bill won't handcuff our attorneys general, who are our chemical cops on the beat. Our bill won't prevent states from taking action on a chemical, unlike the Vitter bill, which prevents states from doing anything if EPA decides to study chemical, even if it takes 7 years or longer for our federal regulation to be implemented. Preempting the states while simultaneously creating a slow and ineffective federal safety standard does not make the grade. Number two, our bill will help quickly identify and investigate new disease clusters, like Woburn was years ago, where chemicals that are in our environment accumulate in our kids and in our communities and sicken and kill residents. And number three, our bill would ensure that all chemicals in the market are ultimately evaluated by EPA, and we would do it faster. Under the Vitter bill, it could take a century or more to wade through the 1,000 high-priority chemicals that need review right now. Nearly 100 years was too long to wait for the Red Sox to win another World Series. We can't wait that long to review dangerous chemicals that could, in fact, harm the children of our country. So I am prepared, we are prepared to work with anyone in the Senate to pass the strongest, most protective chemical safety bill possible. Years ago, it took a civil action by a community in Massachusetts to help pass Superfund as a law. Now it will take political action here in Washington and across the country to protect families from toxic chemicals in the 21st century and beyond. We thank you all who are here today for your leadership on this critical issue.
Thank you, Ed.
Senator Boxer.
Thank you, Ed. This thing is so tough. Okay.
Okay, so let me
No,
move
no,
it over.
no,
Let
no,
me
no.
move it over. Let me move it
No,
over.
do not do that, because I'm just going to, because I'm just introducing other tall people. You know, here's the thing, when you work with Ed Markey, you get back to the humanity of why we're here. And the next speaker is also someone who we all know, because a very popular prize-winning movie was written about her efforts when she worked in the legal field to find out why was there cancer clusters in San Bernardino County in my state. What was going on? And it took her knocking on doors, finding it out, figuring out the cause was at chromium-6. And she put this issue on the map in many ways, just as civil action did. This was another exclamation point. And could I be more proud? I am so happy she's here. She's very busy traveling around the country. She'll talk about what she does. But she came here to tell the truth about the options facing us. Erin Brockovich. You can applaud.
Thank you, Senator Boxer. Thank you, Senator Boxer and Senator Markey. And I was going to save this for the end, and I'll still say it at the end, but I am going to say it now. How much your leadership and your tireless efforts, especially to Senator Boxer, for the work that she has done and Senator Markey does on behalf of all Americans and their families who at some level have suffered harm from chemical toxicity and poisoning. And for all those that can't be here today, I really have to say from the love of my heart, thank you so much for the efforts and the difference that you've made. And it is my privilege to be here today and talk about the TSCA reform bill. I see two bills. One is a bill introduced by Senator Boxer and Markey that I think does reform, does make a difference, and does do the right thing. The other bill that I see is not a TSCA reform, has nothing to do really with reforming chemicals, has everything to do with making the current law, in my opinion, worse. It does not set deadlines for action that could just leave us doing reviews endlessly for 7, 10, 12, 15 years. I thought it was really interesting, Senator Markey, what you mentioned about the young boy that died and how long it took before the EPA could begin to set standards for TCE. A very bad chemical. It's a very bad actor playing itself out through the entire United States and harming thousands and thousands of people. In the Udall-Vitter bill, they make no provisions for us to have a deadline. And I think that that is a very, very dangerous place to go. There's no appropriate funding or fees that could be provided to the EPA to begin review of all of these chemicals. There's 1,000 priority chemicals, according to the EPA last year, that need immediate review. Each chemical would cost $2 to $3 million for review, and offering up $18 million wouldn't even begin to cover what we need to cover on behalf of everybody in America to find out the safety of these chemicals. And most important, what disturbs me in the Udall-Vitter bill is preemption of states' rights. I can't imagine that that would happen. We have 41 states doing incredible work to help the EPA and the federal government in protecting the citizens of America. Senator Boxer being from California and the work that she's done and they have done to set a standard for hexavalent chromium, to the work that Senator Markey and the state of Massachusetts have done to set and look at standards for TCE. We have so much work that needs to be done, and this is a bill that has to be right. We can no longer afford to drag this out and let the chemical industry decide what's right for us, the American people, and the safety and the welfare of our children. One thing that I've been doing, and I'll end here, I'll go very, very quickly, is I have a map over here, and I presented it to Senator Boxer about 2 years ago. I am very visual. I have communities from all over the United States of America reporting to me issues that they are having, disease, cancer, in and around Superfund sites, contaminated water. They're screaming for help. They don't know who to turn to. So I began to map all of the communities that are reporting to me. 2 years ago, it was 350. Today, it's almost 14,000 quantifiable communities around America where I believe we are actually missing disease clusters. People are migratory. We don't track where they grew up, where they lived, what they were being exposed to, where they move away, when they develop cancer, who's it's being reported to. We need better communications between agencies to help all of these people who are reporting. For me, this is what's most important. I think it's what's most important clearly to all of you in this room. I know it's what's most important to Senator Boxer and Senator Markey, and that is the SOS coming from American soil. We need solid reform. Senator Boxer and Senator Markey, their bill will provide us that solution. Thank you.
Okay, we are putting a human face on this whole thing, and we have a wonderful face and a wonderful voice coming up next. And that is Linda Reinstein. She personally experienced the loss of a loved one, a beloved one, and so did her daughter. And they spoke to me many years ago, and that's why she's part of this conversation, because we know asbestos kills 10,000 people a year, and the Udall bill's silent on it. We take it right on. And Linda, will you join us?
Thank you, Senator Boxer and Senator Markey, for showing the leadership, commitment, and the willingness to fight the chemistry industry. My name is Linda Reinstein, and I'm not a lobbyist or an attorney. I'm a mesothelioma widow and the co-founder of the Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization, ADAO. For more than 11 years, we have fought for asbestos to be banned, and we've had strong allies, but we've never been able to get through the industry muddle. I want you to know that the Boxer-Markey bill represents true TSCA reform. It's named after my late husband, Alan, and Trevor, who you will hear from soon. Every nonprofit public health environmental organization supports this bill. The only organization that doesn't is the Environmental Defense Fund, to my knowledge. I want you to look at the language of the Udall-Vitter-Inhofe bill. If it takes them a century to assess and manage the risk of these chemicals, how on earth will our future ever be saved? Undoubtedly, this is not the bill that will protect public health. And more importantly, it is shocking, reprehensible, and unacceptable that the chemical industry has their fingerprints all over the Vitter-Udall-Inhofe bill. So for the record, I'd like you to take a look at their bill. It doesn't even name asbestos. There is no language that will expedite action to prevent exposure and prohibit this deadly mineral or manage PBTs. The other deadlines are also lacking. It's underfunded. But most importantly, it is dangerously flawed for public health. And I urge everyone to do their own due diligence to stand up and say no to toxins, say no to the Vitter-Udall-Inhofe bill, and say yes to the Boxer-Markey bill. For once and for all, enough.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm just trying to see when Trevor comes up. When does Trevor come up? Yeah. Oh, haha, there he is. Continuing to put a human face on this issue, which Ed and I will do from every minute that we can. I want you to meet someone who won my heart, who experienced such a difficult time when he should have been having a carefree youth. And Trevor will tell you a little bit about it, and that's why we named the bill after Alan Reinstein and Trevor Schaefer. Trevor, will you come up? And he's the head of the Trevor's Trek Foundation. Trevor.
Thank you, Senator Boxer and Senator Markey, for your work. It's really amazing, and I hope we can make a positive change, and thank you to both of you for bringing this up. I think we have a great possibility of doing that. As Senator Boxer mentioned, my name is Trevor Schaefer. I'm probably the proudest and the angriest young adult in this room. I'm proud because I survived a diagnosis of aggressive brain cancer at the age of 13. I am proud because I have devoted the rest of my life to promoting awareness of the growing epidemic of childhood cancer and disease clusters through my organization, Trevor's Trek Foundation. But I am also angry. I am angry because our community is falling victim to environmental abuses that result in disease clusters. I am angry because childhood cancer has increased over 35% in the past 3 decades. I am angry because we are not doing enough. In March of 2011, I was fortunate to have the opportunity to testify in front of the Environmental Public Works Committee on the strengthening protections for children and communities from Disease Clusters Act. One of the senators on that committee was the late Senator Frank Lautenberg. After my testimony, he mentioned that somehow we separate the heart from the mind because we get into a conversation about costs. I believe you cannot put a price tag on children's health. The Boxer-Markey bill is true reform, and I'm so proud to have my name on this piece of legislation along with Alan Reinstein, who worked tirelessly to stop the use of asbestos up until the point of his death from mesothelioma. In contrast, the Vitter-Udall-Tosca bill was virtually written by the very industry that it purports to reform, the chemical industry. That is like inviting the fox to watch over the hen house. Environmental toxins and untested chemicals are poisoning and killing our children. Isn't that child abuse? Thank you.
One of the things that is just so desperately wrong with the Udall-Vitter-Inhofe bill is that it completely eviscerates the ability of states to protect their people. And we all know that any progress that we've made has been started in the states. And what I would like to do now is introduce you one at a time to the speakers in the order that they will speak. And then when they are finished, these state representatives will turn to Nancy of the Breast Cancer Fund, and we'll have 3 more quick statements. So if it's okay, if you can line up here, and I would first say it's Matthew Rodriguez, Secretary, California EPA. I'm so proud that you're here. You'll be the first one. And then Lemuel, Shraulovic, Chief Environmental Protection Bureau, Office of New York State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. And then Andrew Goldberg, Assistant Attorney General, Environmental Division from the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office of Maura Healey. And then Ken Zarker, Washington State Department of Ecology. He's the Pollution Prevention Manager. So will you remember that order? It's actually right here. So each of you, when you finish, turn it over the next. So Matt, will you, Matthew Rodriguez, if you'll start.
Well, let me start by thanking Senators Boxer and Markey, and in particular, as a Californian, I'd like to thank Senator Boxer for her many years in representing California and in protecting the health of California citizens. I will be brief. I will just say this. We've written a letter to the Senator expressing our concerns about Senate Bill 697. And the gist of our concern comes down to this, that if you look at the last decade, states have played a pivotal role in setting chemical safety levels. It is states that led the charge, if you will, for setting standards for lead in jewelry. It was the states that actually got us started on restricting the use of phthalates in children's toys. It was the states that really got us started on looking at restricting bisphenol A in baby goods. It was the states, in California and Washington in particular, that recently reached an agreement with industry and manufacturers and the federal government so that we would restrict copper and heavy metals in brake pads. The problem with a bill like Senate Bill 697 is that it will prevent the states from doing this kind of work that we've been doing so successfully over the last several decades. And in fact, it would go even further than that. It would prevent the states from working with federal EPA to enforce laws and standards set by the federal government. We see this as a tremendous step backward. We see this as a tremendous imposition to our ability to protect public health and safety. That's why we're concerned about this bill going further. And frankly, I will also note that it doesn't give me a great deal of comfort to be told that we should be comfortable with a program that will be run by federal U.S. EPA when this Congress has shown no inclination to provide the resources or other kind of support for EPA's programs, many of which we in California agree with. So we're concerned about this bill, and we would like to see any legislation that goes through to change TSCA to preserve the state's rights to enforce the law. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Boxer, for your incredible work on this issue. This has been an issue that the Attorney General of California's office has been working with Boxer for many years now. So on behalf of California Attorney General Kamala Harris, I want to reiterate many of the remarks that Secretary Rodriguez made. Any bill that is enacted needs to enhance chemical safety laws by recognizing that states are a necessary partner to controlling chemicals that are causing cancer, birth defects, and a host of other bad health impacts. California, like many states, has been a real innovator and co-enforcer of laws that inform the public of risks and that reduce our exposure to toxic chemicals. As the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of California, A.G. Harris has prioritized this work, particularly with respect to children, who we all know are always on the floor, putting things in their mouth, and often that are producing these chemicals. That is why A.G. Harris has created a new Bureau of Children's Justice to address these issues, and is why we are standing here today with Senator Boxer. S-697 will send us down the wrong path by crippling and eviscerating state authority to protect our environment and the health and welfare of our citizens. In addition to freezing states from taking action to stop the spread of these dangerous chemicals, S-697 is so loosely drafted that we're concerned that it could be read to imperil existing state clean air and water protections.
Could you say that one more time?
Sure.
Because this is the first I've heard of this, and I want to say it one more time.
Yeah, it's supported, and Secretary Rodriguez and I, our office sent a letter that addresses this as well, so I encourage everyone to read it, but it is very clear that we are concerned that the loose drafting of the bill will imperil existing state clean air and water protections. There need not be a false choice between strengthening chemical safety laws and maintaining Congress's longstanding tradition of cooperation with states. We know this because Senator Boxer and Markey have shown us the way with their proposed bill that will ensure that states will be able to continue to act alongside our federal partners. So with that, I just want to thank you again, senators, for your work to stand up to protect the public health, not only of Californians, but all Americans. Thank you.
Now he's from New York, followed by Massachusetts and Washington.
Thank you, Senator Boxer, and thank you, Senator Markey, for your leadership and for convening this conversation on this vitally important issue. For decades, New York and other states, as we've heard here this afternoon, have been leaders in taking necessary and appropriate action to protect our citizens from the harms of toxic chemicals. Unfortunately, Senate 697, as drafted, would hobble state action in this vital area. That's why New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman and the Attorney Generals of a host of other states have expressed their firm opposition to the sweeping expansion of federal preemption of state law contained in S-697. Attorney General Schneiderman supports strengthening the Federal Toxic Substances Control Act, but such a step forward must not be accompanied by a step backward that obstructs state action to protect their citizens from the harms posed by these chemicals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let's have the Massachusetts.
Yes, thank you, Senator Boxer, Senator Markey. I'm Assistant Attorney General Andrew Goldberg from Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey's office. Attorney General Healey regrets that she can't be here today to speak to you and to recognize the incredibly strong work of our state senator, Senator Markey, and California Senator Boxer in leadership on these crucial TSCA issues. The Massachusetts Attorney General's office does applaud both of the senators for their incredibly heroic work in standing up to industry with respect to moving TSCA reform forward. You've heard about the many critical provisions in the TSCA Reform Act in 697, and there's one of particular importance that Senator Markey has raised that everyone really has put to the front of the agenda here, and that is the concern about state preemption. And our main concern, to put it in 2 words, is that we are deeply concerned that Senate 697 would result in a regulatory vacuum that really would never properly be filled. The bill that we have here, Senator Markey and Senator Boxer have introduced, specifically provides that states retain the right to adopt and enforce their own laws and regulations on toxic substances, in addition to those that exist at the federal level. That really matters for Massachusetts and other states that are leaders in controlling toxic chemicals. In 1989, Massachusetts passed model toxics use reduction legislation. In fewer than 10 years, that law resulted in a 50% reduction in the amount of toxic waste generated in our state. It also established toxics use reduction as the preferred means for achieving compliance with federal and state environmental, public health, and work safety laws and regulations. That law is keeping people safe from toxic chemicals in Massachusetts, and the bill Senators Markey and Boxer have introduced will ensure that it and similarly stringent laws in other states remain both in place and remain effective. We thank Senator Markey and Senator Boxer for leading that fight and for their commitment to this critical public health issue.
Thank you so much. Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Senators. Washington State gladly joins this effort today. We see ourselves as the front lines for environmental protection in our states. We actually serve as the backstop to the federal system. We believe that the federal government should set the floor and not the ceiling for our communities. So we believe that TSCA reform must be done well, or it risks weakening public health and environmental protection, slowing or setting back the progress that many states have made to improve protections in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, now we're going to hear from the Breast Cancer Fund, Nancy Bernheim.
Thank you very much, Senator, and thank you for inviting me to be here. And I want to echo my other speakers on thanking both you and Senator Markey for the incredible leadership you guys have displayed over many, many years. I'm here to state in no uncertain terms that the 1976 Toxic Substances Control Act is hurting us. In fact, it's killing us. The Alan Reinstein, Trevor Schaefer Toxic Chemical Protection Act is the only bill that lives up to the promise of protecting the health of the people that I represent today. I represent the Breast Cancer Fund, the only national organization focused solely on preventing breast cancer. I represent the Americans who are suffering every day and dying every day from diseases like breast cancer that are linked to chemical exposures. I represent the 250,000 women and men who will be diagnosed with breast cancer and the 40,000 families who will lose someone to this devastating disease this year. I represent Marika Holmgren, a breast cancer survivor. In 2007, Marika was the picture of healthy living, and yet that year, at age 37, she heard the unthinkable words, "You have cancer." Marika was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. She lost both her breasts and endured chemotherapy, radiation, and ovarian suppression, and continues with ongoing hormone therapy today. Congress needs to put the health of Americans like Marika ahead of chemical industry interests. But is the Udall-Vitter industry-backed bill, or as we just heard, industry-written bill, the best Congress can do? Absolutely not. That's why I'm here to support Senator Boxer and Senator Markey's legislation. We must take meaningful action to reduce our mothers, sisters, daughters, and sons' exposure to dangerous chemicals. thereby reducing the chances that they'll hear the same words that Marika heard. You have cancer. Thank you very much.
So much. Now we're going to hear from two more speakers, Ashley Orgain from Seventh Generation. She's going to explain what her organization is. And then lastly, we'll hear from Jessica Ahrens, President, CEO, Reproductive Health Technology Project, and then we'll take questions.
I'd like to thank Senator Boxer and Senator Markey for their tireless work to protect children's health. I'd like to also thank our home state Senator Bernie Sanders for working to protect Vermont families. And I am pleased to join Linda and Trevor, Aaron, our friends from the Breast Cancer Fund, and the attorneys generals here today to call on Congress to give the EPA the tools it needs to regulate toxic chemicals in our homes and the environment. At Seventh Generation, we have been working passionately for over 25 years to support strong toxic chemical reform that will protect human health and the environment. We appreciate the work that the Senate is doing to reform the way we regulate chemicals, but more needs to be done. That is why we've organized Companies for Safer Chemicals Coalition. Over 3,000 businesses united in the belief that meaningful chemical reform can unleash economic and job growth and protect consumers and the communities we serve and live in. When members of Congress talk about regulating industry, too often they forget about small and medium-sized businesses that have embraced good business practices. Seventh Generation stands as proof that cost-effective products that not only meet consumer demands but are increasingly demanded by consumers can be formulated and manufactured without chemicals of concern. Meaningful reform will drive more competitive, innovative, and economically sustainable industries while simultaneously reducing the risk from chemicals of concern. Parents and families should not have to worry about harmful chemicals in our everyday products. That's why we're here to tell Congress, enough is enough. Meaningful chemical reform is good for business, it's good for our economy, and it's good for Americans.
Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, Jessica, you can use my box.
I will gladly use your box.
This is the story of my whole Senate career.
Right. Just take them, bear with me. So I'm lucky to follow Senator Boxer for that reason alone, but also honored to be here with her and Senator Markey and all my esteemed colleagues. Again, my name is Jessica Ahrens. I'm the president and CEO of the Reproductive Health Technologies Project. As an organization dedicated to protecting and expanding women's reproductive health rights and justice, the Reproductive Health Technologies Project strongly supports robust chemical policy reform. While access to abortion and contraception are vital components of women's reproductive health, so is the ability to have a healthy pregnancy. However, mounting scientific evidence indicates that numerous chemicals in our everyday environment negatively affect the reproductive health of both women and men through increased rates of early puberty, infertility, uterine fibroids, birth defects, and declining quality and quantity of sperm. Real chemical policy reform, such as that introduced by Senators Boxer and Markey, will give the Environmental Protection Agency the necessary tools to quickly review and regulate harmful chemicals and to protect our most vulnerable communities. While we are all exposed to toxic chemicals, low-income women and women of color are more likely to be directly exposed to toxic chemicals at work, at home, and through consumer products. Increased exposure to these harmful chemicals means that these women are also more likely to experience reproductive health problems that have been linked to toxic chemicals. Compounding the problem, women of color and low-income women are less likely to have access to health insurance or quality, affordable care to prevent and address health problems that may have environmental causes. Chemical safety reform, we've seen a lot of fighting over abortion this week in particular, again, and I do want to thank the senators who have stood up strong for reproductive rights. But I also want to say here that chemical safety reform presents us with a rare opportunity for pro-choice and pro-life members of Congress to work together to protect the health and well-being of women and their families. So we urge senators from both parties to work together so that genuine safety, chemical safety reform can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be very happy to take questions. And you have to know you're okay. Okay, great. And any questions from the press, just say what your we write for and we'll go. Yeah.
Way that you could amend, I'm sorry. Do you see any way that you could amend the Udall-Vitter bill to be acceptable to what you've laid out today?
Well, I could think of 7 changes right now that if they took them, the bill would look like our bill. So I can tick them off. Do you want me to?
Sure.
Okay. First of all, change the standard to reasonable, what is it, reasonable of no harm? What's it? Reasonable certainty of no harm from the standard they kept in there, which is like the old standard. No preemption of our states. There's no reason to do that. And I think, you know, we could talk about that a lot. Some states are going to want to take action because there's a particular chemical that happens to be dumped right in their neighborhood. And it may not come to the EPA's attention. So no preemption of our states. They should study more than 25 chemicals out of the 80,000 over 7 years. We do hundreds. And they should set deadlines for action. They have none. Change that. They should have specific action on asbestos and on persistent chemicals that stay in your body and pile up. They should take action on cancer clusters. Look what's going on here. These communities need help on that. And they should give EPA the resources they need. Now, what I've told you basically are 6, 7, or 8 changes. I haven't kept track of them, but they ought to take all of those changes because the people deserve that kind of legislation. So we are so ready, and just for the record, we have met with them on many of these, and we haven't been successful so far. But the reason we're doing this today is these voices, not ours so much, but these voices behind us, those are the experts, and we're hoping that we can make some changes based on what the experts are telling us. Ed, do you want to?
Yeah, all issues go through 3 phases: political education, political activation, political implementation. So today, we start the political education. Here's what's missing in the bill. Here's what needs to be added. At the top of the list are the attorneys general of the United States, who are the local cops on the beat. We cannot preempt them. We cannot preempt the states from passing strong laws. We stop them. And we believe that there will be an activation. Say, that doesn't make any sense all across the country. There are other issues that Senator Boxer mentioned, but we believe the more the people understand how ultimately enforcement could be undermined if the attorneys general are taken off the beat, that there will be a movement towards making this bill a good bill. Maybe not a perfect bill, but a good bill. Mm-hmm. And right now, because of the things that are missing from it, it cannot be characterized as a good bill.
And have there been just one quick follow-up, have there been senators that have been receptive to working with the two of you to make a better bill? Because
Yes.
there's a lot of bipartisan support.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyone in particular?
I mean, well, I would say you heard the voices of New York here today. You heard the voices of Massachusetts here today. You heard the voices of Washington here today. I have letters from the Oregon Attorney General. We could go on, and those senators are very well aware of the problems of this bill. So, of course, we're working with them.
Yeah, the senators
Anybody?
from
Yeah.
those states and other states are working.
Right. As soon as people understand, we start to pick up, support. Yes.
Thank you. And I'm Lydia Wheeler. I'm a reporter with The Hill. Ben Dunham, the former chief counsel to the late Frank Lautenberg, has called your bill a non-starter politically. Is this bill going to have the support that it needs to pass Congress?
Well, is this the gentleman who works for the chemical companies? He's at a law firm that represents the chemical companies? And is that his portfolio? That's my comment.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Puneet Kolapara with Science Magazine. So you ticked off that list of 6 or 7 things that you would want to have changed in the bill to make it, I guess, acceptable. But at the same time, you also said that it would need to look like yours. I guess I'm sort of struggling to see, is there any sort of middle ground between your bill?
No, I left out a lot of things.
Okay,
that are
so
in our bill. I just named 6 things. That's not such a big deal. How many dishes do you have for dinner? Just one for each of those. You know, your starter, your salad, just 6 or 7 little changes, and we'll be happy. It's not complicated. It really isn't. If you go around saying that there's 80,000 chemicals out there and you only require studying 25 over 7 years, there's a lot of room for compromise. But I just ticked off 6 or 7 things. I could tick off 100 things that I would like to change. So it's very important that you understand that. There's a lot more. Anybody else have questions? Yes.
Maria Hegstead with Inside EPA. I was just curious about the deadlines. Did you get any input from EPA on whether that will be feasible for them to accomplish?
Well, I have to say, if you look at all the TSCA bills over the years, some written by Frank Lautenberg, I was a co-sponsor of those. I know Ed's worked over in the House. These are deadlines we know are doable, and yes, we have worked with all parties to make sure that they were doable, but they're not doable if you don't have funds, you see? So that's why our bill stresses that we have to have funding to study these chemicals, or you're not going to have it done. So yes, with funding, they're absolutely doable. And that's why I mentioned funding, I say to this gentleman, as one of the things that has to be changed, because you can't really do the work without the funding. And one of my colleagues back here mentioned, right now they're trying to cut the EPA funds. So anybody else have questions from the press? You already did? Yeah.
David McCumber from Hearst Newspapers.
Yes.
And yesterday, Senator Udall's policy person told me that the Udall-Vitter bill would give the EPA the tools it needed to ban asbestos. Can you walk me through the reasons you don't believe that's true?
Well, I could have my legal staff walk you through it, but I don't think I'm going to go through all the legalities. I asked this question. First of all, it's very important to note that there isn't one mention of the word asbestos in the bill. Now, I'm just saying to you, if you really want to make it a key piece, that's important. But we'll have people who are experts here, legal experts, explain why they tell me it will never be done the way it was set up. And we'll stay here afterwards and answer the question as far as the details. Anybody else have, yes?
Pat Rizzuto with Bloomberg BNA. I listened to Lynn Goldman, who formerly worked for EPA, earlier today, and she talked about having testified 21 years ago for TSCA reform, and now it's a generation later, and we haven't had it yet. What are your thoughts on the prospects for securing it this time around?
Well, let me be clear. We want a bill that makes life better for our people. We want a bill that is a federal bill that we can be proud of. We want a bill that is good. We don't want to have a bill that is very weak, and I've gone through why it's weak with just in telling you how I'd fix it. You see how weak it is. I can honestly stand here and tell you that there isn't any place in this bill that calls for definitive action on any chemical. It does call for a decision, but no implementation. So if you have a weak bill, and on top of that you say to the states, you're out of here, you can't do anything, you are in a worse position. And that's why some of the environmental organizations who have worked along with this individual for so many years, it's with a heavy heart that they have said in writing, the Vitter-Udall bill is worse than current law. We can't go there. You can't have a bad bill, a bad federal bill, and then tell the states they're prohibited. Do you know in this bill, and I want to be corrected if I'm not right, Bettina, you tell me, when they announce that they're studying these 25 chemicals, just the announcement, nothing can be done by the states. So it's just, to me, the saddest point. But I'm an optimist in the way Ed is. All of these issues start from letting people know the truth. Let's just let people know the truth. And then we hope we will get the kind of changes that Ed and I are very excited to make. Anybody else have a question who hasn't asked before? Yes, and say who you're from. What paper you write for.
Hi, Lauren Gardner from CQ Roll Call. The big difference this year from years past is that Republicans now have control of the Senate.
Yes.
And they have a decent number of Democratic co-sponsors and could move it through the chamber. If you don't get the changes that you're looking for, are you confident that you can stop that version of the bill from moving through?
Well, I don't like these if, whens, buts, and hows, and what if, and how come, and whatever. I want to tell you this in my whole life, that I've worked both in the majority and the minority. 7 times we've changed, just in the Senate, from majority to minority. Let's be clear, I like majority better. So I don't want to fool you and say it's so great in the minority. No, it is not. But regardless, it's up to us to be the truth tellers here. And I have confidence. We have 450 plus groups that oppose this bill. We have attorneys general growing by the day who oppose that bill and support our bill. So I believe in the process. Now, could it all go south and ABCD happen? Sure, I don't know, but I'm not at that stage. I'm at the beginning here, where we are here today gathered, introducing a clean bill that we're very, very proud of, that we think will have tremendous momentum behind it. These groups here, they've just gotten started. And they know this is, if I could use a statement, life and death for the people. So I have a lot of confidence in this democracy that the overwhelming opposition, and I could say I've been here a long time. Ed has been in the House and the Senate a long time, and I think I'm close to his tenure. So many years. I just have not seen such an outpouring of opposition on a bill that I have seen on this. And I just think it's incumbent upon people to just tell the truth about it. Tell the truth about it. And as I said when I started, it's a good place to end. The truth shall set you free. Thank you very much. Ed, why don't you finish? You finish.
1 week ago, no one knew that the attorneys general were going to be opposing this bill. No member of the Senate knew that 1 week ago. No one knew that the attorney general from Massachusetts, the attorney general from California would be saying that this bill is not acceptable. The attorney general from Maryland is going to sit here tomorrow morning and testify before the committee and make it very clear that it's unacceptable in Maryland. And so we're just beginning this process of educating people as to who's on which side and what they need to be changed in the legislation in order to make it acceptable. And so we're beginning, but this is not last week any longer. We're now in a new era, and you can see the groups that are here, and we're going to try to work in a constructive way to make this a better bill. Thank you all so
I
much.
didn't have a chance to tell you that we got now letters from the Oregon Attorney General, the Iowa Attorney General. So we are starting to build, and Ed's right. Thank you all.
Thank you all so much.
And this group.
Fantastic.
Yes.